Welcome back to the Barbell Medicine Podcast, where we bring modern medicine to strength conditioning and strength conditioning to modern medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Jordan Feigenbaum, and today we have a very special guest, Anne-Sophie Fluri. Now, Anne-Sophie is a neuroscientist who's worked in both industry and academia over the last 12 years. She has a master's of research in experimental neuroscience and has published papers relating to the vestibular system, that's the sensory system in your inner ear, plays a crucial role in balance and spatial awareness, as well as in Parkinson's disease. More recently, she started the company Brainwave, where she runs mental fitness and performance workshops for companies. And in this podcast, we're going to leverage her expertise and talk about some mental strategies to improve your life and your workouts. Specifically, we're going to talk about meditation, visualization, and how to develop mental resilience. Anne-Sophie, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, did I miss anything about your background? I like to lay out the CV, the pertinent.
Yeah, no, you actually added some things that I had forgotten about.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the papers I published, which was years ago when I was doing my master's, and in the early stages of my PhD, which I discontinued, I totally forgot about those. We did some really strange experiments. They're putting water into your ear.
I read that.
Yeah,
I read
yeah.
that.
Like my friend mentioned it the other day. He was like, I was reading your paper and you put water into the ear to make people feel dizzy, and I'm like, did I? Did I do
Yeah, like that seems like a long time ago.
that?
No,
Yeah.
your master's research looked far more interesting than mine. Mine was on the anatomical presence of a specific muscle, this vastus medialis obliquus. It's supposed to be this muscle at the distal end of your vastus medialis, part of your quadriceps.
Mhm.
Anyway, have you heard of the AAA? Most people think that's an insurance company, but
Yes.
it's actually an anatomical society in America, and I'm a proud card-carrying member of of that group. Which I think,
Oh
if
God.
people were like, "Is he a nerd or nah?" and I am. I'm a nerd trapped in this Chad body, and I don't know what to do about it. So
I feel like similar. I feel like I'm a similar kind of personality. Like I didn't get on with anyone from my study. Like I think that's why I quit my PhD. It's like I couldn't relate to anyone.
yeah,
Uh,
I don't belong here. Yeah,
no, but then a lot of my friends were like creatives, but then I also couldn't relate to like I mean I am a creative person, but then I didn't fit into those industries at all either. I'm like
yeah.
I don't
You're
know.
too diverse for the system. Nice. Well, I'm super excited to have you. Obviously, we've known each other for a while, and I've been wanting to get you on the podcast, and so finally, schedules aligned. Just for our listeners, so I think we covered your CV, but what are you up to these days? Is it primarily with Brainwave, or are you like doing other stuff in industry or academia, or both?
Yeah, so I left my corporate position. I was a chief science officer of a sleep app after having worked on a variety of meditation and mental fitness apps. Um, and now I set up Brainwave, which is I basically I was doing a lot of workshops for our B2B partners from these apps when we were trying to sell our apps to different companies, the same way that they do for Calm and Headspace. That's why everybody gets their free subscriptions. Similar kind of thing, or selling to insurances. And I just realized that when I'm doing workshops with people in the room, it's so much better to give tailored advice because the
Mm,
advice that you can give to somebody on an app is always going to be, quite limited. And another thing that I found was that you can access a lot of people through apps, but eventually I started with these early stage startups and we would grow to a certain level when things then just became about retention rates and numbers and making money and it's just not where my interest is. So I set up Brainwave and I go to companies, I go to people, I host workshops, I do talks, and that's it's like just picking the best part of my old job and just trying to do that full time.
yeah, no, I love that. As like a science professional, healthcare professional, like any sort of, uh, uh, you know, uh, where you're focused on how people are doing and getting better, it's really difficult to get motivated about like churn rate, like or
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
not. I
Exactly.
Yes. So, in any case, all right. Well, let's hop right into this. We're going to start talking about meditation. And I don't want to speak incorrectly. So, what exactly is meditation?
I think the easiest way to address this is to talk first about what meditation isn't, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions. Meditation is not emptying your brain or emptying your mind. It's not strictly a spiritual practice, even though it does have its roots in many traditions. It's not transcending space and time. achieving nirvana. I think some people have that image. It's not sitting in your yoga gear on a cushion in complete stillness and silence. What it is quite simply just a mental practice of training your attention and your awareness. So it usually involves focusing on an anchor. That anchor can be something like your breath, so just focusing on your breathing, focusing on every inhale, every exhale. Sound quite boring, but it's actually very difficult. You can focus on a sound, so you can meditate to music, like listening to a piece of music, for example, or like a gong sound. Um, you can focus on a mantra that you repeat to yourself. You can focus on different sensations that are happening in your body. You can even focus on cultivating a particular state of mind or a kind of feeling. And I guess there's so many different ways to meditate. It's really just about placing your attention where you want it to be on this specific anchor. And whenever you get distracted, which will happen because it's the nature of the mind, you're going to get distracted. Your mind is going to wander and try to do more productive things or think about thoughts or feelings that you might have. It's just about noticing when you're distracted and bringing your awareness back to that original anchor and setting that intention. And another core factor here is when you get distracted, which you will, it's about not judging that you're getting distracted. So
Mm,
it's a skill to learn, just like learning a new language or an instrument. It requires a lot of practice. It requires a lot of attention, a lot of focus, and not judging yourself when you mess up, because any new skill, you're gonna mess up.
totally. Yeah. No. The way I've understood it classically is like a conscious exercise and like attentional focus towards some either sensorium or thought or like whatever it is, and basically you're training your ability to quote bring it back. You know,
Yeah.
should you get diverted based
Hmm.
on a sound that you weren't expecting, or a thought, an intrusive
Hmm.
thought, or series of thoughts.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't really talk about meditation and like when I'm advising people on things to do, for
Hmm.
example. But I do talk about being distracted quite
Yeah.
frequently.
And you talk about, like, everybody talks about focus, and it's just
Hmm.
being focused.
Yep,
And it's a way to train being focused, because anybody can tell you, you need to focus on your work, you need to focus on your training, you need to focus on whatever. But
something.
sometimes people don't have the skill to focus. And in focusing on something as mundane as your breathing, which is something that the body does automatically, you don't need attention on your breath in order
Let's
to
hope.
breathe.
Let's
Yeah.
hope not.
Otherwise, you would die
You're right.
because it's just something that happens in the body automatically. So when you place your attention on something that the body does automatically, your brain wants to wander. Your brain wants to do something more productive. Think about, what am I going to have for dinner later? I need to have this conversation with my boss. There's 100 things that I need to tick off my to-do list. But I think that's why it's such a good way to train your focus, because especially when you're focusing on something that mundane,
Hmm.
you have a lot of those distractions and you can bring yourself back.
Yeah, no, I like that. When doing some digging for this podcast, I kind of was curious, like, how many people, are engaging in meditation, or at least what they think is meditation. And I found some interesting data, with respect to American adults. It's like 1 in 5 American adults, that's 60 million people, report using meditative practices in the past year. That's interestingly about the same number of American adults who meet the current physical activity guidelines. Is that a coincidence or not? Unclear. But based on your experience, what are the main reasons that people become interested in and ultimately start participating in meditation? I'm sure you've heard a number of stories from people who attend your workshops and people you've worked with. Like, why do people start meditating? What's the motivation here?
Yeah, I think the best data that I can pull is from my work on meditation apps specifically. So
Mhm.
I started working on meditation apps right after the pandemic, which is when a lot of VCs and investors were investing in mental fitness meditation apps, because everybody was lonely, mental health crisis, no community. And so we were developing a lot of apps. And as part of my work on the scientific side to make sure that the meditations that we're delivering or the workshops that we're delivering through the apps are scientifically backed, I looked at a lot of this research, first of all, on what meditations are good and what are they good for, but then also on our competitors. And there were so many competitors popping up around that time. And what we found is that a lot of apps that started as strictly meditation apps eventually pivoted to sleep apps because they
Hmm.
looked at the data. And when you open the app, a lot of the time people will click on, well, I need to meditate because I have sleep issues. So if we had followed the data, we would also have turned into a sleep app. But the reason is not, I think, that people are necessarily looking for meditation to help with their sleep. It's that sleep is one of the first symptoms that there's anything wrong with you on a psychological level. Um, Poor sleep, you can find that with anything, with depression, anxiety, loneliness, and not only that, but also it's very okay to talk about your lack of sleep in a social setting, no matter who you're with.
Hmm.
It's less it's more taboo to talk about, I'm depressed, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling lonely.
Yep.
So my guess from being in industry in that way is that a lot of people are looking to solve their sleep first and foremost with meditation, which I think is very misguided because meditation uh, is marketed as this relaxation technique, and it's not necessarily going to relax you, especially if you're beginning, because it's a new skill. And any
Mm.
time that you try to practice a new skill, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna be frustrated. It's gonna take time. So if you go into meditation thinking that immediately you're gonna feel relaxed, you might you might be shocked to find out that that's not what's gonna happen.
Yeah, you just got literally a mental workout with
Yeah,
some
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
pro
you for the first time you're realizing just how distracted your mind is, or just how, oblique, that's the wrong word.
Yeah,
How
I like it.
strange your thoughts are. But yeah, I would say a lot of people will come to meditation for help with sleep, for help with relaxation, stress relief, anxiety, any sort of mental health support. I would say I think less people come to it from a place of wanting to focus, even though, and we'll get into this later, I think focus is one of the strongest um, reasons to meditate in the literature. But I think everybody wants to focus better. Everybody wants to have better memory and focus, but I don't think that people actually want to train their memory and focus.
I mean, yeah, I mean, similar parallels with respect
Yeah,
to various aspects of physical performance and
yeah.
such. Yeah, no, that's a perfect segue, though. 'Cause I wanted to start when discussing meditation, not only what is it and why do people seek it out, but what sort of legitimate health benefits are there based on existing data? And it sounds like from what you're saying that it's mostly for maybe like attentional focus on a particular task,
Mm.
duty, creative process, something like that. So maybe start there, and then we can answer the sleep question because I don't know how big that market is,
Mm.
for these apps. I assume millions, if not billions, of dollars, and so maybe we can address that at the end here.
Yeah, so in preparation for this podcast, I just off the top of my head sat down for a few minutes and I made a list of all of the things that I remember from like studies that I've looked at,
Mhm.
where they say meditation helps with so and so. So I'm gonna read a few of them.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so we have meditation helps with creativity, loneliness, increasing your feelings of trust, reduced anxiety, helps with feelings of depression, reduced stress, and therefore also improvements in health related conditions that are impacted by stress. So, like IBS, PTSD, fibromyalgia. It improves self image, cardiovascular health. It gives people a positive outlook on life as measured by, no, aging as measured by telomere length. Improved memory, improved friendships and relationships, less emotional reactivity, more compassion, helps with food cravings, helps with addictions, helps with sleep, helps with pain management, and reduces blood pressure.
Yeah.
So
So basically
these are all
everything.
like yeah, this is what like I've seen it all. I've seen so many papers published, and an interesting one was the feelings of trust because part of meditation is feeling more connected to yourself and therefore depending on the meditation that you do also more connected to the world at large and feeling connected to other people and individuals and the world, and that indirectly that then helps you feel less lonely but also gives you more trust in other people. So there's some of these claims are like quite abstract. Some of them make a little bit more sense. um, there was a big meta-analysis that came out in 2018. It was called Mind the Gap, if I
Yeah.
remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, remember
I've seen this
this?
paper. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, from Van Damme and colleagues.
Not Jean-Claude, to be clear. Not the actor. Got it.
But what they found, and some of the people who participated on this paper are mindfulness researchers, and they are part of the reason why they've brought mindfulness and meditation out into the public and said all of these like positive claims and everybody should do this. But there are a few things that they noticed in a lot of these studies because there's hundreds of studies. And the main concerns with some of these studies are that there are no active control groups
Hmm.
in a lot of these studies. So you compare somebody who's doing a meditation to somebody who's not doing anything or waiting, and that doesn't really tell us much because any self-care activity that you have that is in some way structured is going to be better than sitting around and waiting.
Totally. And the person who's likely to undertake any sort of
Yeah,
self-improvement type
anything.
behavior is
Yeah.
far different than the person who's either resistant to that or not able to participate, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and it's the same with like taking a pill and it being a placebo. It's like you think that you're doing something beneficial.
Yep. There's some effect there. Yeah.
There's some, yeah,
I think that's interesting because you one of the questions I had for you is like how good is the research here, and that maybe speaks to a bigger point that like, at least my understanding when it comes to meditation is that we're looking for a direct like input meditation, output reduction in blood pressure or
yeah,
reduction in cardiovascular disease risk or symptoms thereof, or trajectory, whatever improvement there. My interpretation here is that meditation, and to the extent that it does either help people manage stress or reduce stress, if you wanted to put it on that sort of scale, it enables people, unlocks people to participate in other health promoting behaviors, make different choices, and ultimately kind of change how they interface with their environment and the subsequent stress they have in their day to day life. It's not that meditation itself is like
yeah.
the one thing that's doing it's maybe like there's a bunch of positive externalities to that sort of behavior. Is that accurate, or am I
Yeah,
just blowing
yeah.
smoke here?
I mean, that's where all of these other additional health claims come in. It's because meditation can make you more aware of yourself and your body. It can make you more mindful. That's the whole point. But then that might affect the other things that you like. You might eat more mindfully. You might engage in more self-care activities. You might be now you notice stress earlier
Hmm.
because you're aware of the symptoms of stress in your body, and so that you can make decisions based on that. um, Plus, I think it's just so useful to have these tools in your toolkit to understand your body's physical reactions to stress, to danger, to anxiety, and just know how they show up for you.
Hmm.
And then as you move around in life, you're just much more aware, and then hopefully you make better and healthier decisions for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. People, they'll commonly ask us because we do explain, particularly in our seminars and some of our other work, that an individual's stress from not only their day to day life, but just, their entire existence to date
Mm.
shapes their experience of any particular stimulus. So whether it's like a medical condition that's genetically based, or that an exposure, or
Mhm.
it's exercise, even that is applied to the individual, and their uniqueness as an organism effectively shapes how they experience that. And part of that is
Mhm.
stress, right? So we mention stress, but then people will invariably say, "Well, how do I manage stress?" And the hand wavy answer, "Oh, just you can meditate." you know? And they're like, well, okay, like how do I do that?
Mhm.
Or like where do I start? Um, we're gonna get there. But I
Mhm.
did want to briefly address if there's all these health benefits from meditation
Mhm.
due to maybe the knock-on effect of participation in that activity and subsequently your ability to focus. Is there an application here in sport? Right? Because it seems like okay, maybe there's like a improvement in performance that could be gleaned here by being able to focus maybe consciously, right? You have these tools now that you can focus on sports performance, work performance, cognitive performance, something like that. Is that legit, or am I just making stuff up here?
Yeah, no, like I think absolutely, and like a lot of pro athletes will use different types of meditation as preparation. I think the most important thing is, again, just that ability to focus
Hmm.
and to really focus when it matters the most. So especially if you're competing in something and the moment is now, you have one chance to score the goal, like all eyes are on you, the crowd is, I don't know, either they're shouting abuse or they're just cheering or whatever. You have to be able to focus on what you need to do in that moment, and not get distracted by all of the external noise. And I think that's probably the most important way that meditation can help you. And also, like, if you're an athlete, there's a lot of pressure, right? And there's probably a lot of negative self-talk and doubt and all of these things, especially if you're performing at those pro levels, that you need to be able to deal with.
Yeah, so the meditation would let you effectively focus on the task at hand and at least on what you can control, perhaps. Is there good
Mhm.
evidence here for, like, look, if you're a soccer player, or you would say football athlete, it
I'm
help.
not.
Yeah, either
I'd
way.
say both.
Right, right, right. Or any particular sporting application that you've seen like decent evidence for, just as to give people maybe like an example of the magnitude of potential benefit here. Is anything that exists in that space?
So I know that there's a lot of research on a type of meditation called visualization, which
Hmm.
is, you're still meditating, but you're focusing on a vision or mental imagery, and that's used a lot in sports applications, and a lot of coaches use that with their teams. There was one study where they showed that people who went to the gym, so there's two groups of gym goers, people who practiced visual imagery, so they were visualizing themselves perform like a clean and press,
Hmm.
while they were doing it, and then there was just the other group that just did it normally. The group that visualized at the same time as they were executing the exercise were able to lift like 15 pounds heavier than their max weight,
Nice.
which is like, I don't know how much 15 pounds is in kilos.
7.5 kilos
Yes, okay,
approximately. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Which is like significant.
totally.
It was a small study, but there are a lot of different examples from different institutions that are kind of similar. It's like when you're focusing on, but again, it's down to focus. You're focusing on executing the exercise, or you're focusing on the task at hand. You're able to perform better. There's with sports particularly, there's less evidence to say that it helps you with putting on muscle mass, even though you would think that, okay, if somebody's doing it, if they're visualizing at the same time as they're lifting over a course of, I don't know, 8 weeks, that maybe they have increased muscle mass because they're able to lift heavier. But I think those studies are kind of, they're difficult to execute.
Yeah, where's the control
There's so
group?
many different variables.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, so maybe before, because we're going to hop into visualization
Mm.
specifically here in a second, but if somebody wanted to start meditating today, they hear this podcast, they're like, Anne-Sophie, she sounds very intelligent. I've been wanting to manage my stress better, and meditation seems like a reasonable ask for me. Where and how would you recommend they go to start?
And maybe I shouldn't say this because I've worked on competitor apps, but I'd say Headspace is a great place to start the app,
Sure. This
because
is not
it's,
sponsored by Headspace,
yeah,
by the way.
not
Yeah.
not not, but you're welcome to sponsor either
Yeah.
of
Sure.
us.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
uh, or just, I mean, just go on YouTube. This is what I do. Like, if I need a guided meditation, if I'm feeling in a place where I'm like, I know that my focus is lacking, I can't meditate by myself. I just need somebody to guide me through and give me those signals to remind me to, bring my focus back if I'm distracted. I just go on YouTube and I type in a certain meditation, and I like, you can type in meditation for compassion, meditation for uh speaker anxiety. You can they've tailor-made meditations for absolutely everything
Hmm.
nowadays. The principle of the meditation is the same. It's most of the time it's going to be focused attention or visualization or something like that. But just type it into even Spotify, YouTube, or something like that. Or if you want to learn very strict kind of meditation, just like the foundations, Headspace is a great place to go because they've got these series. It's like Introduction to Meditation. You can do that. The problem with these meditation apps, and this is why I've stopped working on meditation apps, is that it gets very samey.
Hmm.
Um, the script in a meditation, after a few years, you're like, I've heard this before. Like it's just always the same. It's somebody telling you focus on your breath, and then after a few minutes, they remind you, hey, like, are you distracted? Come back and focus on your breath.
Got it.
So it's yeah, it's not always going to be the most exciting thing. And apps also, they need to focus on retention rates, and so it's hard to gamify something like meditation because it's counterintuitive to have any sort of like dopamine rush associated with that,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
gamify it in any way that you're earning points. Like it just doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, you're in
Uh,
the middle of a meditation and all of a sudden a little notification pops up. You've been meditating for 100 minutes this
yeah,
month.
yeah, yeah,
Congratulations. And you're like, you just
yeah. Like very, very early on to this, like I was into all of the like the tech devices and the wearables and whatever. And there's wearables for meditation. Like you can wear an EEG headband
oh,
that
cool.
you can just have at home, and you can do like biofeedback so you can see how well you're meditating, which
I think I saw some women wearing that at Coachella. Yeah, I thought it looked interesting. It turns out it's EEG. All right. Interesting.
Yeah,
I
I mean, yeah, I would say the best way if you wanted to start meditating right now, the best way is to just focus on your breathing for a few moments, and you don't even just set a timer for like 5 minutes and see how long you can focus on your breath. And
mhm.
anytime that you get distracted, which you will, and sometimes you'll get distracted after just 3 breaths, and you're gonna think, this isn't for me, I can't do this. That's not an invitation to stop, it's an invitation to practice again, it's
Getting
an
back.
invitation to redirect your focus. You have 5 minutes, just every time you get distracted, you're back in the present moment. Use that as an opportunity to come back to the practice and focus on your breathing.
Yeah, no, I like that. And one of the strategies I've personally used, I don't, really extol my virtue of how good I am at meditating publicly, and I don't pretend to be an expert here, is that when I am doing something like this, I will actually, if I find myself get distracted, I'll hold up a finger and I'll be like, okay, that's one, that's two, that's three.
Mm.
It only is like because with respect to like training is a big part of my life and sort of part of my background. And so making progress is also like very tuned into that. So I'm like, how am I getting better? So what I'm doing
Mm.
working. And so I can like gauge, I'm like, okay, this particular block of time that I set out to meditate for, now I got distracted 13 times. Okay,
Yeah,
it's a number,
yeah,
but I would prefer it to get better, over time, you know.
yeah. I agree, but also it just where your focus is and how easy it is for you to focus that it gets better the more you meditate. Of course, you're going to have less distractions, less interruptions, but there's still going to be days, even 10 years down the
Worse.
line, where you're
Totally.
just not focused, or there's external distractions. You can't create the most perfect space. You can go into a yoga studio, do a meditation class. It's going to be nice and quiet. It's going to be calm. You're going to be in your comfy clothes. Um, but that's not a representation of real life.
Totally.
And yeah, it's going to help you in real life when there's like noises around, but you have this meeting that you need to focus on, and maybe you can like use that skill to now focus on your meeting versus those noises and distractions. But at the end of the day, like we live in a busy world. There's
Yeah.
always going to be distractions in the form of real external noises or internal distractions, thoughts and feelings, or you're going through something. Um, it could be anything. So even if you're an experienced meditator, like don't judge yourself if
No.
one day you're sitting down and you're just distracted all the time.
Yeah, I don't harangue myself about, oh my gosh, you're terrible today. To me, it's just more of an input to say, oh wow, there's a lot that's
Mhm.
going on up there, and so perhaps
Yeah.
increase the frequency for a spell. Just as maybe that's helpful. I mean,
Yeah. But
I'm
this is
self treating here, a little bit, but
but this is also where I think that it fits in very well with like sports performance, is that the core tenet of meditation is that when you're distracted, you're not supposed to judge yourself for being distracted. You're not supposed to
totally.
judge the nature of the thoughts or the feelings that you have, even though, you might be sitting there and you're like, I'm going to do this like meditation practice and I'm going to be really good. And then you have thoughts that are like, I don't know, like evil thoughts, let's say, like
Totally.
intrusive thoughts, or I don't know, like you wish badly upon someone.
All the time.
You,
Just kidding.
but you can't judge yourself for having those thoughts, and that helps you with your self-awareness.
Hmm.
That's what's going to help you make better decisions for yourself in your life in the future, because you understand yourself and you're not judging yourself. You're like, okay, had this weird thought. It doesn't define me. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. Just had that thought. Okay, it's not an important thought. I'm not going to act on that thought. So now I can just, away with it.
Yeah.
And that helps you. And in a sport context, that can help you because you might have thoughts where you're like, I'm not good at this, I'm not going to win, I'm not going to do this,
Failure.
I'm not good enough, like I'm not strong enough, I'm going to fail.
Every day.
And 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 you can learn how to live with those thoughts and not be, you know, just completely taken away by them.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of, especially for me, just in powerlifting, which we charitably call that a sport, there's like this perseveration over numbers. And if
Mhm.
you don't achieve those numbers, especially at a meet, oh, it's a failure. And you worry about it. And you're like, I got to hit this. I have to. And then, you can kind of spiral, in the warm up room and you're like, oh, it feels a little heavy. Oh, I start to worry. And it's like, well, that's not helpful to the task at
Yeah,
hand.
yeah, yeah,
Task.
yeah.
Yeah. So my,
That's what
one
can
of,
get you to where you need to go.
yeah, it's weird. One of my cues, I guess, or thing like kind of recentering practices is like I feel how tight my belt is. Like I feel this belt, and
Hmm.
it's like supporting me, and that feels. And if I just focus on that, I can't actively think about anything else.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway, because it's
That
not tied to any
and
performance thing. You see what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah,
just
but
a
but but that's also why meditation can help with feelings of like happiness and contentment, because the more you're paying attention to the actual sensations in the present moment, the less
mhm,
that you're focused on anxieties about what the future holds
totally,
or about the past, because there's no room for that when you're like, oh, how does this chair feel that I'm sitting on, how is my weight distributed, I
totally.
can feel the sun on my skin. You just, when you're in the present, there's most of the time, unless you're going through something really bad, um you're safe, you're there's no threats around you, and then you focus on the physical sensations of the present. You try and bring in all of your senses. There's yeah you're not lost in your thoughts. You're
Yeah.
not anxious or stressed out or worrying about anything.
It's hard to focus on multiple things at one time is what I found.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I think that's some good advice. People can start with an app. They can start with their breath. They can start with some sort of physical sensation that they're actively feeling. Ideally, it's a neutral sensation and not like a particularly bad one. Because, like with respect to pain, hypervigilance
Yeah,
towards pain
yeah,
sensorium tends to be a general badness for like how they recover from said pain, disability related to that, and kinesiophobia, so fear of movement related to that pain. But otherwise, it's just challenging to focus on these three things at the same time.
yeah,
It's like pick
yeah,
something,
yeah.
ideally neutral, and just kind of turn the wheel there.
Just focus. And that's also where a lot of the research on learning and memory comes in, is
Hmm.
that a lot of the time, and this has come up a lot for me recently because everybody's talking about like what nootropics should I take, or like
God damn it.
what supplements can I take to boost my memory and cognition. It's like no supplement is going to help you if you're not paying attention to what you want to learn in the first place.
Yep.
And if you're focused on what you're learning, you are actively taking in that information. It's much easier for you to encode that into your memory versus when you're distracted. So no supplement's going to help you with your memory if you're not paying attention in the first place. And if you're training yourself to pay attention, even better for your memory.
I love that. I love that. All right. Well, let's pivot to visualization. We kind of alluded to it earlier. The
Mhm.
way I understand visualization, it's the technique that involves creating mental images of desired outcomes, experiences, potentially behaviors. And so it's like a form of mental imagery that aims to enhance performance, well being, and ultimately achieve our individual's goals. Where I have had kind of some experience with visualization is in sport, where you cannot actively practice or engage in that sport as much as you otherwise would like to. Sometimes there are rules. So, for example, in MotoGP, right, they limit the amount of practice that competitors can do. It's a safety concern. So, like, you can't go to the track every single day before a race. They give you,
Okay.
yeah, there's a certain amount of testing time, certain budget that can be allocated there in a certain amount of time because they don't want their athletes to just crash their brains out all the time. So what they'll do is not only sim based training, right, but
Mhm.
also like active, like this is our visualization time, and so we're gonna rehearse the course in your brain, or
Yeah,
this
yeah.
particular turn, or what gear are you in, and
Hmm.
what's your lean angle, stuff like that. Is that legit? Like when it comes to
Yeah.
performance in sport, like is there good data on how visualization can carry over here?
Yeah, and have you ever seen the videos of like Formula One drivers that
Yeah.
are they've got the steering wheel in their hands and they have their eyes closed or they're seeing it in an image and they're mentally rehearsing that. But it's basically they have learned the track, let's say like the back of their hand, and they could
Yep.
do it with their eyes closed. And in that way, they're just, I mean, on the day when they're competing, they're just going to be so much more well equipped to do that because they already it's like the muscle memory.
Totally.
But there's different types of visualization that you can do. Michael Phelps, famously, I think it was the 2008 Olympics, he had water in his goggles while he was swimming, and he
Terrible.
still won. Yeah.
I hate that.
But he had, as part of his training, apparently would use different types of visualization where he would visualize, and this is called visualizing in the negative, which isn't always recommended for people. It's like a stoic principle where you imagine the worst thing that could go wrong
Hmm.
and you mentally rehearse how you would overcome if that were to happen. Sometimes people use that also if they're getting on stage and they're nervous or they're performing or something like that, they imagine the worst thing going wrong, like forgetting what they were going to say or just being too nervous to take the shot. And because they've mentally rehearsed it so many times, they know what to do in that situation if it ever happens in real life.
It's like
So
their
it's just
backup plan kind of thing. Yeah.
exactly. So it's just like mentally preparing yourself for that. But then again, it really depends on individual differences. There are some people for which that kind of technique wouldn't work because they would get too caught up in the anxiety of something going wrong. And then
Mhm.
it would be the self-fulfilling prophecy where they're like, they're just
Well,
aware of all the things that could go wrong.
yeah, yeah. Do you find that there's like a particular type of visualization, whether it's rehearsing the act,
Hmm.
right? Which is maybe more like neutral, right? You're just doing
Yeah.
doing the
So
thing.
that's called process visualization, where you're
Okay.
rehearsing the process of doing something or of
R-
executing a task.
And I
Um,
assume there's also negative type. What's the worst thing that could happen? And I assume there's
mhm.
also positive visual. What's the best thing that can happen?
Yeah,
Maybe.
and so then there's yeah, so the main ones I think that people use, and especially with athletes, is process visualization, where you're visualizing the process of achieving the goal, and that helps you first of all because you know everything that it takes in order to get there, and that's what the F1 drivers are doing when they're visualizing the process of training for the I don't know all the right words for
No,
most.
it's totally fine.
But then you have outcome visualization, which is where you visualize the outcome. So um, a lot of people do this. They visualize what it would look like if they've already achieved their goal. So you could visualize, for example, what would it look like me winning this powerlifting competition?
Yeah, a lot of dudes would be like, cool.
So you visualize it, but you critically what you have to do to make it more effective and to engage more areas of the brain is to bring in as many senses as possible. So you have vision, and the reason why that's so effective is because the visual system takes up such a big portion of the brain.
Hmm.
Your visual cortex is quite big. And when you're visualizing something, you activate similar areas, like overlapping areas, as if you were seeing it in real life. So obviously you don't have the input from your eyes into the optic nerve and the visual cortex, but there are certain brain areas that are still activated as if you were really seeing it
Seeing the
happen.
thing. Hmm.
Hmm. And then if you bring in some of the other senses, maybe you can imagine yourself in the space. You can smell what that conference room smells like, or the what the air is going to be like. You can visualize your posture or how it feels to have achieved that goal, and that floods your brain with the same chemicals and endorphins as if you were really achieving that goal.
Yeah.
And that helps you bridge the gap between where you are now and what's possible for you in the future. So for some people, so some like breath work wellnessy people will co-opt some of that science and say like this is what manifestation is.
Mm, I see.
you know
Interesting. Okay.
you can very quickly like fall into that kind of area, which is not something that I believe in personally, but I see visualization as a it is a way to work towards your goals. And there is also research that shows that if you practice visualization, like goal-oriented visualization, that you're more likely to achieve your goal. That's not because you're magically manifesting something to happen. It's
Yeah, yeah.
because most of the time you see this as a practice that you do day in, day out. So every single day you're priming your brain to think about, what do I have to do in order to achieve that goal? And so your actions are going to be more aligned with, maybe you're going to, even on an off day, go to the gym or practice because you're like, hey, I've got this big goal and I can feel what it feels like to do that. And I need to practice, and I need to, get over however I feel today and make sure that it happens. Again, just last thing that I would say is that it's always like down to individual differences, because there are
Totally.
some people where that's going to be really useful for them as a goal setting technique. And then there are some people where, because they've already felt all of the feelings associated with actually achieving the goal, actually end up less motivated to
Mm.
train towards the goal because they're already happy, they're already satisfied.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so ultimately not really helping them along. Yeah, they feel like they already got it.
I feel
Yeah.
like you just need to understand what kind of person you are.
Yeah, yeah. Identifying what are your predilections and what are your,
Hmm.
sort of maybe to co-opt a term from like business, like pain points. Like, okay,
Yeah.
where's the gap?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, some of this to me, visualization seems almost like an information gathering process, especially if you
Hmm.
are trying to, you visualize yourself um, succeeding, for example, and you identify like, oh, there are various steps along the way that I was maybe either blind to previously or not, hadn't fully fleshed out, and now you're like, oh,
Hmm.
I need to address these things,
Hmm.
or should practice them. And visualization,
Yeah.
I use it. I use visualization probably more than any of these other type things, particularly like related to meditation and other
Hmm.
maybe mental health practices. Mostly related to training, competing most of the time,
Yeah.
and then also in motorsport where you can rehearse a
Hmm.
lap. What's the perfect
Yeah.
lap? And oh, if this line, this particular path through a corner is not available, I would do this one. And so you
Hmm.
just have there's a shorter road to go to what's plan B. You don't have to think on the fly. You've kind of already done that legwork, and so it becomes
Hmm.
more, as you mentioned, like, is it muscle memory? Is it brain
Hmm.
memory? Is it? I don't know. It does seem to be useful for me, but I can also imagine a scenario where a person engages in all this stuff, and maybe that doesn't really work for them. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, individual responses, as with most things. And
Yeah, I would say, like, as a goal setting technique, it's really great. It's like, it's the difference between somebody who wakes up on, or it's January 1st, and they like write a list of 10 things that they want to achieve in that year, and then they never look at that list again, versus somebody who says, like, do you know what, I'm going to visualize achieving this goal. And like, they're just much more likely to actually achieve it because
mm,
they, first of all, they remember it, they're paying attention to it, and then they're taking actions that are in alignment with that.
do you recommend that people, if someone wanted to start again visualization practices today, do you recommend like stacking that with a meditative practice? Like, okay, first get yourself focused and then pick a visualization target, or is it like you don't need to do that? Maybe we'll start with just a process based approach or something like that. Do you have any recommendations on this front?
Yeah, I guess it really depends on the person. So first of all, there are some people who will be listening to this and they'll be like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Fair, yeah, honestly,
If you tell them to close their eyes and imagine an apple, they just won't have, like, it's never happened for them before.
yeah. Like, what's an apple?
Yeah. But like, you can, like, what if you close your eyes and you visualize an apple, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I'm thinking this oblate spheroid object. It's shiny, it's smooth to the touch. The light's glaring off one
Yeah.
side wherever the light source is. It's in my case, it's green because green apples
Hmm.
are superior. Granny
Hmm.
Smith, preferentially. That stupid stem is sticking out at a dumb angle.
Okay, so you have a very clear idea of what that looks like
Yeah,
for
yeah.
you. I have the same. Mine is like green and a bit of red, like on the side, but I can
Okay,
see
that's
like
weird,
the
but yeah.
shiny, and it's turning. Like I can see it turning,
Oh, it's on
right?
a okay. It's on a
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, a
It's
little
left
easel.
stuff
Yeah.
down and it's turning. There are some people who will be like, I have no idea like, I know what an apple looks like, but I can't just bring it to mind.
Mm,
And so there's a small percentage of the population that has something called aphantasia.
okay.
Heard of it? Where
No.
they cannot voluntarily recall images. So
Interesting.
you tell them to imagine whatever. It's like
They look at you sideways. Yeah.
they're just like nothing. It's black.
Okay.
So for those people, visualization is obviously not an option. It's something that you can train because it's not necessarily to do with not being able to see mental imagery. It's just that process of voluntarily recalling mental imagery
Mm,
that is kind of disrupted. So they might still be able to dream in pictures, but they won't be able to close their eyes and visualize something. It's that
interesting.
the voluntary recall that just system is, and you can train that by slowly practicing visualization, and like it can get better over time for some people. For some people, it can't. So if that's you, then maybe visualization is not going to be like the way to go. But I would say all of these different types of meditation, it's mostly just about being able to focus and focus your attention. So if you're trying to visualize something and you're always getting distracted, yeah, maybe start with just a strict meditation first
Mm,
to train yourself to be able to pay attention, if that helps. For some people, visualization is the better way to train attention because you have more anchors, like more things that you can call upon. You can call upon your sights and the sounds and like what it might feel like if you're really putting yourself into that space. Um, some people actually use this for, to fall asleep because they imagine themselves like lying on a cloud and it's fluffy and it's dark and it's
mm.
cool, and you can really bring about all these different states of mind. But I would say just maybe set aside a few minutes every day to visualize something, and it can be as simple as visualizing how you want the rest of your day to go forward. You can visualize yourself achieving all the tasks that you wanted to do, being in a good mood, having good conversations with people, having a good influence on people, people walking away from interactions with you feeling like good and positive.
Mm.
So that's a really good way to start because it's like it's real, it's tangible.
Yeah, this may be a dumb comment, so just bear with me on this. But it does seem like what you're saying, obviously, some regular practice, regular frequency
Mhm.
doing this seems to be helpful. But temporally, time wise, it
Mm.
seems like, yeah, ideally you're doing this beforehand,
Yeah.
like whatever the task is. And is there like some immediacy type bias here where it's like, look, if you have a particular task that you want to get up for, you want to
Mhm.
maximize your performance or your whatever, right before? It like is that the perfect the best time, or like could you do it hours before? Could you do it days before?
Yeah, like okay, so it depends on what the task is specifically.
I'm just thinking
Um,
about squatting 300
yeah,
kilos. Like
okay.
I kind
So there are some studies if you're looking at things with immediate effect where they do these have you heard like ultrasound imaging of the muscles,
oh
like where
yeah,
it's like immediate the bio yeah, of course you have because that's what you do. Like, but this is more, separate to the work that I've done, but if you have this like real-time visual biofeedback,
mhm,
they've had this in settings where people are seeing their muscle be activated and it's a specific muscle. And if they're visualizing that muscle be activated by seeing this ultrasound image, they can actually engage more of the muscle,
mm,
um, and engage more like smaller and specific muscle groups to increase like the muscle activation.
force
So
production and such. Yeah, okay,
yeah.
cool. Yeah, yeah. Who would
So
say that?
you're able to like recruit more of the muscle than if you were just like flexing with without kind of paying attention, and that visual feedback really helps. And so the same way, like if you don't have that visual feedback from uh, the ultrasound, you can do that by mentally like visualizing what's the muscle that I'm activating now. And I
Oh,
think that was
interesting.
really, but like, do you ever do that when you're doing a squat? It's like really paying attention to like these are the muscles and you really feel what it feels like to activate and engage that muscle.
Yeah, I mean, with when lifting heavy weights, most of the time my visualization strategies go to like, what would this perfect rep look like?
Mm-hmm.
And like, what am I feeling? Like, with
Hmm.
respect to the bar in a squat, for example, the
Hmm.
bar is fighting me. It wants
Hmm.
to crush me, take me forward. It wants me to fall, right? So what's that? What am I going to feel like? And then what does it look like? And to the extent that I don't know, I could be placeboing myself.
Hmm.
But if I'm trying to just catch a pump, for the bros, for example, yeah, I will divert my attention towards like, oh, what? Yeah, okay, my biceps. All right, here's what that muscle. Here's what it looks like anatomically, and I'm trying to do this particular action. Maybe that's been my hack this whole time.
Mm.
I've just been visualizing my
And
muscle.
I do that like there's so many times I'm at the gym and I'm just like I'm on my phone and I'm just kind of like doing I just know I need to like I have the weight set at the weight that I know that it's like I'm pushing myself, but I'm just doing it and trying to get it over with and just not paying attention. But
Sure.
then for the last few reps, it's like I really need to focus so that
Hmm.
I can do this. And because when you're visualizing it and when you're paying attention, you're recruiting more of the muscle. It
Yeah.
like that will help with, your gains, I guess.
Yeah, mind muscle connect. Maybe that's what people are really talking about. Because I'm like, well, your mind is definitely attached to the muscle. Otherwise, you're going to be up a creek, like trying to get that thing to contract. So,
Yeah.
you can set that aside. But yeah,
Mm.
perhaps, again, diverting attentional focus towards the muscle and or muscle groups that you're aiming to target. Yeah,
Mm.
it seems like that is a reasonable ask for people that are like, how could I level up with my
Mhm.
training here? And so you're actively doing it while you're lifting, which is
But and
never really.
that's the whole principle of mindfulness.
Mhm.
And we were talking about like how do people begin? And a lot of the time people think like, oh, I don't have time to, sit and do a 10-minute or 20-minute or 45-minute, God forbid, meditation practice every single day. Um, but mindfulness is a form of meditation, which is you're just being mindful of like the sensations and this is what we're talking about. Um, you don't need to take any time out of your day to practice mindfulness. The only thing you need to do is to remove the distractions and focus on the task that you're already doing.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
can practice mindfulness by like being mindful at the gym and focusing on the muscle activation and like
Mhm.
imagining which specific muscle group you're targeting and what it feels like to lift the weight and what it feels like to all of this stuff. Like that is a meditation. Like your gym can be like a practice in mindfulness, just the same way as when you're cooking or when you're folding laundry. Pay attention to the sounds, and the smells and the textures. That is mindfulness, and that's going to help you have a happier life because again, when you're being mindful and when you're being focused on the task at hand, your brain is less likely to think about all of these like awful scenarios that it's making up.
Yeah, it's funny. I think people almost, and maybe I might be projecting, is like if you're doing a mundane task in life, you're almost purposely trying to be distracted. You're like, I don't want to think that
Mhm.
I'm doing laundry or dishes right now or cleaning, but it's like this is an opportunity to practice being
Mhm.
focused, even
Yeah.
if you don't want to smell
Yeah.
the smell of dish cleaner or the whatever, how the fabric feels as you're
Yeah.
folding it or whatever.
Yeah.
But it could be a way in a person's busy life that they could actually kind of practice some of these
Yeah.
things.
And for those people who are, wanting to know like the best nootropic and,
No, man.
will creatine help me with my cognitive function? The research is showing that the best thing for your memory are these idle moments. It's when you're not doing anything to just be mindful. That's when a lot of the information processing happens in your brain. It's
Yeah.
like when you're at the gym, you need a rest day in order for the muscle to recover, right? Like it's part of your the regimen. It's
Hmm.
like it's essential. And it's the same thing for encoding memory. You're just constantly getting this barrage of information from all of your senses, and the brain is like it's made to forget and not pay attention to things. Like if you were paying attention to all of the things that you're seeing and feeling and hearing at the same time, you'd be so
Yeah, I'm
just
overwhelmed right now, to be
yeah,
honest. Yeah.
exactly. Because, but you're not paying attention to the way that the shirt feels on my body, or the way that the chair feels, or the temperature of the floor, or the air. You're not paying attention to all those things. The brain is, in a way, created to forget and not pay attention to those things. Otherwise, it would just be too much. But in those idle moments where you're sitting and doing nothing, don't try to use those to take in more information and
Mhm.
maybe sometimes when you're listening to a podcast, don't try and, do that while you're also cooking and cleaning. Like I know that everybody wants to multitask but maybe just sit down and listen to a podcast and try and take in the information from that. Like that's enough.
Yeah,
For
how about a single task? Let's start with a
yeah,
single
yeah.
task first.
Just
Yeah.
yeah, and there's also, like neuroscientists don't believe that multitasking is a thing, even though everybody like says that they love to multitask and that they're so efficient when they're doing 100 things at once, but like it looks like in the brain that it's you're actually task switching between
Totally.
different things.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're not paying attention to five things at once. You're switching your attention between like five different things, which is costing you a lot of mental energy.
Yeah, you're only getting 20%. Yeah, I would love the study I would love to see is you give people some sort of informational podcast, right?
Mhm.
And half the group they're listening to it while they're performing household tasks, for
Mhm.
example, and the other half they're just sitting there
Hmm.
listening to the
Yeah, yeah,
podcast.
yeah. They,
And then
but
you check
there are
retention.
studies, yeah,
Yeah, I'm
there
sure there
are
are. Yeah.
studies like that, and there's studies even where they followed up with people 5 years later who had to do a task where they had to remember like a few words or something like that, and they called them a few years later and they said like, "Oh, do you remember the words that you had to remember for this
Can you
experiment that
imagine?
we did?" And the people who were paying attention and who
Hmm.
were just sitting and doing nothing else, they were better able to remember 5 years down the line the words that they were given.
There you go. Well, but maybe it's not about doing more; it's about doing better.
Yeah,
There's a
doing.
soundbite.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah, it is.
Clip
It.
it. Yeah. All
But
right.
I would say, because we were mentioning like how long should you have to practice, and the studies that are the most solid studies on meditation, where you actually see structural changes in the brain as well as the behavioral changes, is after like 8 weeks of
Okay.
mindfulness. So because you
Some
have this
amount of time.
like mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is an 8-week course, you do 20 minutes to 40 minutes every day. And if you want to see changes in your brain structure, so the neuroplasticity in action and more gray matter in your hippocampus, which is like helps you with memory as well,
Mhm.
then 8 weeks. You gotta stick with it at least 8 weeks. And if
Yeah.
you want to see state-related changes where you're actually changing who you are as a person and becoming a more mindful person, you want to do around 45 minutes every day.
Well, yeah. It's an
Although,
ask.
yeah, 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 it is. But there are also benefits associated with doing it for like up to 20 minutes, but it might just be a little bit more transient.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's the same thing as exercise though, right? Because people are like, okay, well, how long do I need to exercise to build muscle? And it's like,
yeah,
well,
exactly. It's not like one big gym session.
no, you got to keep doing it, and it's going to be some number of weeks before you're actually going to be able to detect appreciable changes in the structure and morphology of the muscle. Although in one single session, sure, there's some benefit there, but
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
stacked over time.
yeah, exactly.
All
Same,
right.
same here.
Yeah, mental workouts. The last thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap this podcast up is mental resilience. And this was one of the topics that was really interesting to me because when we started doing our seminar, we talk a lot about health and performance. So performance is pretty straightforward to define, but health is a little stickier. And you go in and you look for what have other people said for defining health. And it started in the 1940s where this definition published said it's being free of any disease, mental, physical, emotional, whatever. And it's like, oh my God, in that case, no one's ever healthy, right? Like, because when are you in this state of nirvana, like,
Mhm.
ever in your life? And so the definition we use in our seminars is from a 2011 piece written by Huber, not to be confused with Huberman. Huber in 2011, British Medical Journal. And the definition they use for health is that it is the ability to adapt and self manage in the face of social, physical, and emotional challenges. Now, much of that definition has to do with the concept known as self efficacy. So, when somebody has confidence in their ability to exert control over their own motivations, behaviors, social environment, etc. So, from a neuroscience standpoint, is some of this rooted in mental resilience? Like, is that really what we're talking about?
Mm. Yeah, I definitely think so. There's different definitions of what mental resilience is, depending on who you ask or like what theory you look at. Um, Personally, for me, like I look at it in a mechanical way. It's like the same way in mechanics, like if you exert force or pressure onto an object, how long before it bounces back to its original form
Yep.
and can be used for the same purpose. Some people like to, just talk about mental resilience as not just bouncing back from adversity, but also coming out better
Ooh,
from that.
stronger, better.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
exactly.
More
It's
robust.
like
Yeah.
I don't always go to that because I don't then you get into like this weird psychology world as well where you're like, oh, everything bad happens for a person purpose and you come out stronger and like I just, that
Mm.
I
Sometimes
don't
bad
think.
stuff happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes bad stuff just happens, but
Hmm.
it's as long as you know that difficult times will come, but you have trust in yourself to overcome those things. And again, it changes from person to person and it's like it's depends on people's circumstances because if Jeff Bezos lost his job or if he was, outed from Amazon, that's not going to affect him in the same way that it would affect somebody who works at the Amazon store,
Hmm.
who is responsible for feeding a family of four. It really depends on how, like, what circumstances you're in. social factors, health factors, all of those things. But then also, yeah, I think a big part is how you reason your way out of a situation. Whether you can tell yourself like something bad is happening, but I trust myself to get over it. Something bad might be happening, but it's a redirection. It's something bad might be happening to me, but it's an opportunity for me to learn and to come out stronger and to like prove myself or something like that. I think
Mm.
I think I think that's really important because with this whole meditation stuff, the reason why I became so interested in that is because when I was younger, bad things really happen. Like a lot of bad things happened to me, and I just had this mindset of this is just my life. Bad things just happen to me all the time, and like it's just gonna be one thing after the next, and you kind of have this feeling of hopelessness.
Hmm.
And even though I was studying psychology and then I did my neuroscience and then I was doing, it wasn't until I was actually looking specifically at the studies of putting monks in MRI machines that I realized, oh, I have a say of, like I can determine how bad something is or like how I'm going to reason my way out of the situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's why these techniques are really useful
Yeah.
because they give you a sense of power.
Yeah, we talk a lot about self-efficacy and particularly the different characteristics of people that have like a high level of self-efficacy versus a low level of self-efficacy.
Mhm.
And individuals who have a high level of self-efficacy tend to have good insight into what's happening. They
Mhm.
feel like they have some level of control over what's happening, and ultimately have enough resources where they can kind of change the direction of what's happening or change they feel like they can change the outcome, whereas people with low levels of self-efficacy, a number of interesting things. One, they do not have good insight into what's happening.
Mhm.
They also feel like they're not in control, they're not like a
Yeah.
main driver of what's happening, and ultimately they've also had multiple experiences where they have either failed to do something, and so that's kind of like, yeah, helplessness is
Yeah.
some sort of a feeling they commonly report. So when it comes to like mental resilience, is are there strategies like how do you get mentally more resilient? Like how do you develop that? Is it just look, man, you need 45 minutes a day of visualization, you need 10 minutes a day of meditation, and you need a journal, and you're good to go. Like how would you recommend somebody like gets on the path to being more mentally resilient?
So again, I would say it really depends on the person.
Hmm.
But if you look at one of the ways that you look at mental resilience, there's six components. So there's health, and this is your physical health, sleep, all of those things, nutrition, which is like a big thing, and that's important to just have that down and have that secured. Then you have vision, which for a lot of people is the most important thing. It's you have this vision for your life and your future and like where you want your life to go, and that kind of like defines all of these other ones. Um, Vision, then tenacity, and this is your ability to pick yourself back up after you've fallen down and keep going. That's a lot easier when you have a vision because you know what you're working towards. Um, then you have composure, and this is all about your ability to stay composed when you're going through stress, is to self-regulate. Mindfulness is really important here. And then the other one is collaboration, and that's all about the relationships that you have and the social support. There's also studies that show that if you feel like you're part of a community, if you feel like you have social support, you're bound to be more resilient. But I think for all of those components, something that you can do to work on them is to develop that ability for self-awareness and reflection through something like meditation. And it doesn't have to be that strict meditation. I think I would encourage anyone who's interested in this to like look up different types of meditation. But I think because the knock-on effects are so vast. It can help you with health and your relationships because it helps you be a better listener. It helps you pay more attention, remember things, have more engaging conversations. It also practices that non-judgment, which I think, I'm not saying everybody who meditates is a good person or like above everybody else,
No.
but I think it's a really good skill to have is to just see something or like whether that's an adversity or whether that's something else to be able to see that, not judge it, but then critically think about how am I going to address this?
Hmm.
And with some of the with some of the fMRI studies, what they've shown is that people who meditate a lot, they have better connectivity from the prefrontal cortex, like where all your executive functioning happens, to the emotional areas of your brain, like your amygdala. Even in some cases, your amygdala can shrink, so you have less of that emotional reactivity. Um, but you have better connectivity from your prefrontal cortex to your limbic system, the emotional centers of your brain, which just allows you to approach problems with more of like a level head, which
Hmm.
I think is good in any circumstance. And especially if you want to be mentally resilient, you have to be able to have a clear mind when you when you go into a situation.
Yeah, you have more tools at your disposal that you can
Hmm.
face this challenge with, in addition to like maybe removing some of the self-deprecating
Yeah,
judgment stuff that goes
yeah,
along. Yeah, like this is
yeah.
happening to me versus, to use a manifestation phrase, for me.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
happening for it. But
yeah.
like, but then you can use all these different types. You can use visualization to help you set a vision and a clear goal for your life. If you're lacking direction, that can really help you because you can sit down and reflect for a few minutes every day. Where do I want my life to go? Especially if you feel a bit lost. Where do I want my life to go? And it can also help you because a lot of the time people um, go through difficult situations not because things are just happening to them, but because maybe they lack that vision and they're putting themselves into positions that they don't need to be in. Like, for example, if you're in a job that it's not your dream job, it's not helping you get to where you want to go in your career, and it's a really shitty situation. Sorry if I can not swear on this podcast.
We're rated R, baby.
Your boss is awful to you. You're under so much stress and so much pressure, and that's affecting your health. That's affecting your relationships. That's affecting so many other aspects of your life. If you just had this vision of where your life was going, you would actually you might realize that you don't need to put yourself under all of this stress. You don't need to put yourself through that specific adversity. You can pick your battles, so to
Mm.
speak, right? And I think visualization can also be great for that to help you build resilience, to help you realize that, not every battle is worth fighting.
Yeah, and a person who views themselves as like in control of their own destiny, right,
Mm.
on some level, they're
Yeah,
probably more apt to make changes,
yeah,
or at least they feel more empowered to make changes versus a
yeah,
person who's like, I have no control over this. I can't do anything. I'm stuck. And it's
yeah,
like, well, you are
yeah,
now.
yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, interesting. Okay, I have this is like a lightning round thing. So just here you go. I want to ask. I try to ask most of our guests these questions. So first off, this is a barbell medicine podcast. We have to talk about exercise on some level. What is your preferred exercise like routine? I think, as I recall, you were previously into like bodybuilding, like physique competition stuff. What are you doing now? Are you a Pilates princess, or what are we doing?
Not after your podcast. Thank you
They all
very
right.
much.
Yeah, yeah.
I listened to that.
Oh, sorry.
Um, no, no, no. I still love strength training, bodybuilding. I think for me, it just gives me a lot of structure,
Mhm.
because it's, yeah, like, I don't know, it's very goal oriented, which makes sense to me.
Mhm.
Before I did that, I spent years, like, I would always be quite active. I would always be in the gym, but I wouldn't really see any progress. And then it just kind of came to a point where I'm like, why am I spending all this time? Like, yeah, I feel great, but like I do want to see some results. So I love structured
Yeah, all right. There you go.
routines and nutrition and like, yeah.
Yeah, no, it gives you it's a good anchor, right? You're like, okay, this is the process. Here's goal oriented. Here's my I can chart my
Yeah.
progress. Everything that I do in my lifestyle is like
Yeah.
helping,
And
supportive.
and I think for some people, especially when I was doing this like hardcore and like I would go for dinners and I would bring my own food. Some people thought that it was quite restrictive, and I understand that it can be, and it's not, the healthiest of uh, types of exercise, especially if you're competing, which I never did. But for me, it was actually very freeing because I just hired somebody else to
Mm,
keep track of my progress, to tell me what to eat and what to exercise, and so that just took a lot of that mental load off of me.
yeah, I like that. All right, second lightning round question. I'm going to ask for either what you're currently reading
Mhm.
or a book recommendation that you'd want to pass on to our audience. Yeah, don't none of the fairy smut. No, that's not appropriate. Let's not.
I haven't even read that,
Yeah, good, 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 good,
but
good.
I'm so tempted.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right.
Okay, so a book that basically that changed my life and my understanding and also the course of the research that I was interested in many years ago now, I think 2008, was The Emotional Life of the Brain.
Ooh.
This is by, and I always mix this up, and I should probably learn it, but can't be bothered. Either Richard Davidson or David Richardson.
It is by Richard Davidson.
Richard Davidson, who he is a professor from the University of Wisconsin, or was at the time, but they really pioneered a lot of the work on, putting monks in MRI machines, understanding what's happening in the brain when people are meditating. It was really inspiring to me, and this was really transformational for me when I was in that mindset of these things are always happening to me, and this is just how my life is going to look, and it's just going to be one thing after the next. And I think from that book, and it might be a bit old now, hopefully there's an updated version, it really helped me understand how I can change my outlook on life and how I can change my brain and understand my emotions in a different way.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. Next lightning round question. What's one thing that people should start doing to improve their mental game?
Can I say stop doing?
Sure. I love
Stop
that.
multitasking. Do
Ooh,
monotasking. Start monotasking. Stop multitasking.
I like that. It's a trend,
Just
on
do one
trend.
thing at one time. Like it's enough.
Sure. And yeah, potentially combining that with like just focusing on what are you feeling, what are you seeing, what are you hearing, what do you smell,
Yeah.
whatever, just
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah, if you have something to do, just do that thing. I promise you there's going to be enough like information from all of your senses to like pay attention fully to that one thing.
Cool. I like that. Last but not least, where can people find you? We'll link all this stuff in the show notes, but yeah, where can people find you on the interwebs and such?
On the interwebs, a few different places. So I use my Substack to talk a little bit more about some specific research in neuroscience, particularly to do with meditation, like wellnessy stuff, debunking some or like thought pieces on that.
Mhm.
I use my Instagram to poke fun at a lot of the wellness trends and meditation trends. So if you're interested in more of like just not so serious content, you can find me there. My Substack is Rewire Me with Anne-Sophie,
Like
which
that?
rhymes.
Yeah.
And
Bars.
and then my Instagram, I don't know if I can say it on here.
Yeah,
I
it's
have
Coochie. It's
very
Coochie by Gucci. I'll link that in the show
just link
notes.
it. My Instagram is linked in the show notes. Yeah, I would love to see you guys there.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Barbell Medicine podcast, where we bring modern medicine to strength and conditioning and strength and conditioning to modern medicine. Again, I'm your host, Dr. Jordan Feigenbaum. Special shout out to Anne-Sophie Fluri for joining us on this podcast. But before you guys go anywhere, please leave us a 5-star rating and a review. It really helps drive traffic to our podcast so we can keep bringing you all the latest nuance in health and fitness. From everyone here at Barbell Medicine, we'll catch you next week and every week right here on the Barbell Medicine podcast.